We'll kick things off with the favourites for the tournament, England, and taking on Serbia. Jude Bellingham would open the scoring after 13 minutes, and that was pretty much that for the game. England sat back, Serbia were the better team in the second half. Harry Kane did hit the crossbar, but it really was a poor performance from England, but they do get the victory, the 3 points, to open up their tournament start as we welcome in Mark Ogden is with us, Mario Melchiot as well, before we go to them. Let's kick things off in the studio. Job done, I suppose.
It was hard work watching you.
Oh, it was hard work watching them.
I think a wholly uninspiring performance from England. We saw, Germany take a very poor Scotland side apart. We saw Spain dismantle an experienced Croatian side. And we saw England surrender really a lot of possession, way too much, to a very mediocre Serbia side. And ironically, the first 15 minutes was actually quite upbeat from England, passing and moving, and Foden drifting off the left and linking up with Bellingham and looking a threat. They get the goal. It was an excellent goal, and Bellingham charging through the middle of the park, as you'd expect. It's the trademark. And then it sort of just went a little flat, and Serbia had a couple of half chances. And then the second half, from the moment the ball was kicked off in the second half, England were on the edge of their own box. And this is, and maybe there's some sort of plan here to conserve energy. I don't know. I don't think so. And it was worrying that England just didn't go and make a statement and say, here's 2 or 3 goals, we're killing the game off, we're making the substitutions, and this is a cakewalk. That's not the case. And that's going to be, I think, some of the criticism that comes Gareth Southgate's way. He'll say, like you said, job done, 3 points. But trust me, had this been a better side today than Serbia, and England had played in this manner in terms of sitting deep and isolating Harry Kane, this could easily have been a different result.
That's the point, isn't it? To take forward that if this was a proper opposition, someone who could take their chances, control the ball in the final third, we'd be having a completely different conversation.
Yes, 100%. I think watching the England side today, I think it's all mental. I don't think it was tactics from Southgate. He wouldn't have said to his team, once we go 1-0 up there, why don't we just sit back? I think it's a mentality shift in the players that they need to get rid of as quick as possible.
But these are experienced players that have won the Champions League, they won the Premier League.
But why is Southgate not out on the touchline? I know they've won it. Well, why is he not on the touchline saying, if that was a Klopp, if that was a top-class coach...
He's not that way.
He's out there and he's going,
he's not
get
that
up.
Way. He's not that way.
15, 20 yards up the field, he can passing the ball. It's his job to do that.
Yeah, he's not the type of manager. He wouldn't do it verbally. What he could have done is took Phil Foden off and put Anthony Gordon on. Then you've got fresh legs. You've got a dynamic there when Jared Bowen came on. There's something different late on in the game.
What do you mean mentality? Like, just take us through what they're thinking.
Well, go back to the Euro final when they played Italy and they were winning 1-0. Italy were all over the place. It was a prime example where England should have got their foot down and won that game 2-3-4. They didn't. They went 1-0 up and they panicked a little bit. They looked at the scoreline. They tried to protect the scoreline. They think possession is king because they're winning 1-0. That's something that I saw today in England. You go 1-0 up and Craig's right, 15 minutes they were really good. Bellingham was off the charts good. Him and Saka, I thought were the best 2 players on the pitch by a country mile. Some players were invisible. And I think it's nerves. I think it's getting over the line where they might grow into the tournament. It might be a case where you're in your first game, you've seen all the big sides make a statement, they've got really good wins, scored lots of goals. They were probably thinking after an hour, we'll take a 1-0 win here and we'll face the criticism and we'll move on to game 2. That's the only thing I can think of, but I think it's mental.
Oh, England are not good enough to defend the game at 1 defensively.
Oh, just today I meant. Because France would have torn them apart.
Yeah, even today that was edgy. England are not good enough defensively to just see a game out at 1-0. That's not a good enough back four at this level to do that. There was a moment in the second half, it was early in the second half, when, and I'll get to this side of the field a little bit later after the lads, but Jude Bellingham chased back into the left-back area as he does, and he won a tackle, and he won England a throw-in, and then he turned to the rest of the back four and he went, get up!
Yeah.
Up! And his frustration was evident to see.
Mark, obviously, as a fellow Englishman, was that as hard a watch for you as it was for me?
It wasn't great, was it? But I think we have to accept that it is the first game of the tournament. This sort of performances happen. But what struck me is that You know, the guys that talk about how England played, certainly second half, how slow it was and how ponderous it was and how unambitious it was. You know, a lot of these guys play for Liverpool, they play for Man City, play for Arsenal. And in their nature is to go forward and when they're 1-0 up, to go for a second, to go for a third. So it's just when they put on that white shirt, and whether that shirt weighs so heavily that they're kind of restricted or they're constricted, or there's something about them when they play for England that they don't play as they do for the club sides. And it's a concern because Serbia are probably the second best team in the group, so it probably will get easier for England from now on in this group, and they'll go through quite easily. But Serbia are a top team, so when they face a team like a Spain or an Italy or a France in the semi-finals, if they get that far, it's going to be so much harder because they were conceding possession to Serbia's second half, and Serbia had some good chances last 15 minutes. You know, they should maybe have taken one of them. So that'd be the concern, that it's the same old story repeating itself with England, whereby they can't keep the ball against teams that can pass it even half well. You know, the second half possession stats, I think Serbia had the most possession. England should be dominating possession. The players can do it for the clubs, so why they can't do it for the country, I don't know. But it's a worry because we've seen better teams already this tournament, and I think against those teams it'll be the same old story again. England will play well, they'll have all the energy, they'll be full of commitment, but when it comes to keeping the ball and doing something with it, that's when they not fall apart, but that's when they fall down. And we've seen it before. Croatia in 2018, Italy in 2020, France in 2022. When they're playing against a team that can pass the ball better than them and be more decisive, they lose.
Mario, everything was so slow and sideways and backwards at times from players that we know who are so dynamic for their club sides. Why do we see such a shift in attitude today?
You know, the jersey could wait maybe a little bit more, and also the expectations, you understand? Because it's not only that England is watching them, it's also in my country, you know, where I am now, in Holland, it's everybody's watching England. Why? Because they're so talented. So then when you watch them and you see them going about it, it's sometimes, I ask myself, you know, the season can be really tough, you know. The Premier League is not an easy season, I know that. But still, when they come to tournaments, sometimes it feels like that could be an answer to their energy levels. And what I also feel is like, I don't want to be too hard because it's the first game, and we all know the first game you don't have to play your best game. And it's always been like that. Every tournament where any country plays, it's not the first game is their best. It's just how you grow into it and making sure that you advance. That will be the only positive thing that I have to say about England, that they can grow and keep the momentum. But the one thing is, you know, when I talk about the attackers, they're going quiet. I was waiting for Harry Kane. The only thing I saw was him making that header with hitting the crossbar. I was like, wow. Why did it took him so long? Because this is the Harry Kane that we clearly, all of us, admire. So I was surprised that he was that quiet for so long.
But was Harry Kane a victim of the way in which the 10 players behind him were playing?
Yeah, a little bit. Or maybe a lot. But I can already see, and I don't mean this as like a Scottish perspective, because that's, you know, we're talking about a team, England, that are one of the strongest and one of the favourites, albeit they have some issues. I can already see a problem in this England team involving one of the best players, and that's Phil Foden. And I think better managers and better teams will pick this tactically out, is that Phil Foden on that left-hand side, because Bukayo Saka plays right, wants to drift. At Man City, he plays on the right, he plays as number 10. He wants to drift and he wants to link up with Jude Bellingham, and that's great. And when they link up and they go forward, and maybe they'll create better chances as the games go on. But if nobody fills in that left-hand side, and I talked about Bellingham doing it in the second half, and he did, but I think managers will pinpoint the fact that Saka is quite rigid on the right, but Foden has a licence, certainly, I don't know if Southgate gives him the licence, but I'd imagine he does. Foden has a licence to go and join in, to drift. And Bellingham, and they want to join in with the strikers, and that's fine. But when better teams will exploit that, Don kept saying during the game, there's a switchy play on there, there's a switchy play on there. Now, Serbia wasn't good enough to do it. But better managers and better teams will be looking at the video and go, we can get at England's left-hand side, we suck them in, Foden will drift inside, he'll look to link up with Bellingham. If we can win it quickly, there's going to be a big gap down our right, their left, we can exploit that. Because on the other side, Saka is quite, as I said, he's quite rigid in the way he plays. And I think that might be an issue for Southgate going forward. He's not going to drop Foden, don't get me wrong. He has to find a way to get these players in, but get the balance.
How does he find that way?
Though, tactically, when you look at where Saka plays right side, he's got a right back behind him in Kyle Walker that loves to bomb on and get forward. Phil Foden hasn't got that luxury. So when you look at it on paper and you see Phil Foden's position, drifting in is the best thing to do if you've got a full-back on the left-hand side that likes to get in behind. That's the way managers like to work. He hasn't. He's got Kieran Trippier, who's quite conservative, and he's a right-footed player. So when Phil Foden comes into that space, we said first 50 minutes, we went, look at it, it's quite good. Like, Foden's really close to Harry Kane. Bellingham's really close to Harry Kane. It's good. Then what happens is you lose a bit of possession. You lose that little bit of confidence. You lose half a yard, and then all of a sudden that space, as Craig's saying, for the opposition is there to pick England off. So I would imagine behind the scenes, if Luke Shaw can get fit for the next game or the game after, that might suit Phil Foden an awful lot more if he is going to then drift inside for someone like Shaw, who's a left-sided player who likes to get forward, to try and get on the overlap, because you see it on the right-hand side.
But he's never going to be fit enough, is he?
Not sure.
He's never going to be fit enough to do that. I mean, he's never... You know, that's a big ask. I've always said it's a big ask for somebody who hasn't played for months to come into this level of
That's
football.
the difference tactically, is when you look at Saka, Walker, Foden, Trippier.
And the Foden thing is, he's such a talented player, and you want to get him and Bellingham on. England want these players, Saka, Bellingham, Foden. They want them heavily involved, right? Because that's where they get the best out of them, with Rice backing up from behind. And the way Foden does that generally is not standing on the left-hand side, because that's not what he does for Man City. So it's his natural instinct to drift. And I think as this competition goes on, we're going to see that potentially as a problematic area for England, and something maybe Southgate will address, or maybe it won't. The other scenario is the Trent Alexander-Arnold question for me was not answered.
Yeah, let's address that. Obviously, he was
not that he was.
He was lining up alongside Declan Rice. Obviously, looking to offer maybe something different with his passing ability. Mark, what did we learn today about his potential to play in that position going forward?
I don't think he's dynamic enough. I don't think he's quick enough with the ball at his feet, and that isn't his role. And it reminds me a little bit of when David Beckham started playing that role back in, the tail end of his career. He just wants to spray the ball around, and Trent does a little bit more than that. But I don't think he's the dynamic midfielder that you want. If you're going to play in somebody in that position, play somebody who plays there. I know Kobbie Mainoo is inexperienced at Man United, Adam Wharton even less experienced at Crystal Palace, but at least that is the role they play for their club. And I think Alexander-Arnold, it's almost like it's a celebrity move for him. He's done really well at right back, and he sprays the ball in, but he can't defend quite well enough. So let's find a role for him. But he's not a central midfielder, and I don't think it works. And I think against a better team who pass the ball quickly, a Croatia, for instance, or a better version of Croatia now, passing the ball in little triangles, I don't think he's quick enough to get around that area to actually be an advantage to the England team. So I don't think it works, and I don't think he's going to play at right back. So I think the only place you play Trent Alexander-Arnold is wide on the right as a right wing back, but I don't think that's going to happen. But for me, it didn't work in that midfield role because he's, like I say, he's just not quick enough with the ball at his feet. He just wants to spray the ball long all the time.
It's a weird turnaround, Augie, isn't it? Because Trent Alexander-Arnold wasn't, going back probably 12 months, 18 months, couldn't even get in the England squad because Southgate thought he wasn't he wasn't a solid enough defender, which is fair,
yeah.
Which is a good argument because we can't really debate that. And all of a sudden now he's in the England squad again, but he's in there because he's going to play in the middle of the park. It seems to me that he's scratching about in that area. It's interesting you mentioned Adam Wharton, who's been absolutely terrific since he's been at Crystal Palace from Blackburn. But that's a big call, isn't it, to put somebody like him in a tournament like this?
It is, but then, why pick him in the first place? Why overlook a player who plays that role really well in favour of a guy that doesn't quite know what his best position is? Alexander-Arnold plays a lot of Hollywood passes, great, but I think you've got to make something at the end of it. And I just don't think he's suited to this team. I don't think he has the defensive attributes in that holding midfield role or that defensive midfield role to bring anything to the game. And England can get away with it against Serbia. They'll get away with it against Denmark and Slovenia. But as soon as they play against a good team, as you guys know, that pass the ball quickly in the final third, it'll be chasing shadows. And that's what England don't need. They need somebody who can actually do that job that is required of him. And Wharton does it really well. And so does Mainoo. So you've picked them in the squad, use them.
What do you think, Mario? Oh, Mario's gone. What's interesting, Mark, I thought overall, if we have one positive from this performance, is we've seen it from, you take it back to Gascoigne, you've got Beckham, you've obviously got Rooney, like the poster child for these England sides. A lot of pressure on them and very much commercials here. Just got Jude Bellingham everywhere. he showed no sign of any nerves or any sort of desire to hide, did he? Obviously scoring the goal, but as Craig said, trying to be that leader on the pitch.
You know what's amazing about Bellingham? He's not even 21 yet. He's 21 at the end of June, so he's still 20 years old, and he's playing like a guy in his late 20s. He's just carrying that team, and a brilliant kind of old school, midfielders go, arriving into the penalty area late, heading the ball into the back of the net. He has got everything that you need, and I think for me, he's the captain of that side. It's not Harry Kane, it's Jude Bellingham. He's 20 years old, and I think if he stays fit, England have got a chance. But I think he just needs a bit of more of a solid base behind him so that when they're playing against the better teams, he can do what he does best rather than being dragged back into defensive positions. But, he's a superstar, isn't he? I think, we all get a bit kind of fed up with Ballon d'Or talk, but he's a candidate for it. He's one of those players that has got everything. I think England have got a world-class player in the midfield at the moment. I think he can make England go all the way, but there's a lot of issues in that team to address before he does that.
Oh, just see it. Just going to see it. What? It was like you at Wembley in '99.
Oh my goodness!
I had to say
Don't even compare this.
No, but
this guy.
No.
This guy's a phenomenal.
No, I understand. I'm not comparing you.
The goal, you're comparing the
you were.
goal.
I thought you were.
Folks, I've not been drinking before I come on here. I'm not comparing him with Jim. I'm saying Scotland, England at Wembley '99 when you scored. The way that, and it was Tony Adams, and the way the back post, Don comes in, physically outmuscles him, gets up. We talk about Jude Bellingham.
Bully did defend today, didn't he?
He saw that ball. Yeah. The Bellingham's, he's had all the plaudits this year, but that was somebody that knew I might take a whack here.
Yeah.
But as a midfielder, you see it, and he attacked it, and it was a full-back. It was tucking round, and he just absolutely smashed him out of the way. Bang! He was the only one getting.
He's gold dust. He absolutely is. You could write a book in the last 2 years of what he's done. Top man at Real Madrid, player of the year. £100 million player. What shirt do you want? I'll have Zidane's, please. Completely boss it. You watch him play, and he's got a strut, and he's got an arrogant strut, like in a nice way, like where he absolutely owns the pitch, and everyone feeds off him. You just watch him, you see him, and you see the way he plays, you see the way he's receiving the ball. As Oggy said there, and Mario said, he's bossing the teammates. He wants the ball, demands it. Craig said there, he's getting his back four up. He's a future England captain without a shadow of a doubt.
And did you mention the word nerves?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mario's back, obviously.
Yeah.
Back from his sabbatical.
Yes.
Has a couple of minutes. Has a cup of coffee.
What's connection?
Has a little glass of wine. Come back, keep chatting, lads. But you mentioned nerves. Honestly, I've not seen, and he must be. There must be.
He is, Craig.
No, but I have not seen one iota of this guy as a 16-year-old. Now, you're a 16-year-old. You go to Germany. You're in a foreign country. You're away from your family. You're playing for a big club. He must have had the butterflies then. He must have been nervous. But since then, as his career has just blossomed, there has been no sign for me with Jude Bellingham that we could be in a World Cup final. And I think he approaches it the same way because he has supreme confidence. And not many people have that. Supreme confidence in his own ability, as Oggy said. But for it to happen, it's for somebody at such a young age, it is quite incredible.
And to that point, it was no surprise to see him play with that confidence today, Mario, because we've seen him do it every step of his career.
No, I think what you guys already highlighted. I think when you watch a player, and I think it's just a human thing. I think when you watch him and he's that confident, I think it's just a moment that you have to enjoy it. And I think the people that don't like the confidence of him is probably people that are shy away themselves and they don't know how it feels. But when you watch him, how comfortable he is, it's not only because he's confident because he wants to be, no, because he possesses that much of a talented player. And when you see him play, the way he picks up the ball, and if you see how the players give him the ball, that's very important there. Because sometimes when you play in a football team and you demand the ball, you don't get it all the time. But when you get it every time you ask for it, that says enough about your ability and about how the team is watching you. And that's what I saw today, like how he buzzes around. And then, Craig also tapped into Foden when he plays on that side. The only worry I have with him being so free, and if Foden would look for another freedom as well, like he is looking for it, I'm worried for the break that somebody will hit England with. If they attack and they become vulnerable when someone hits them on the break and they are not in position to stop that break. That's the only question. Because if you have one free man, you play it could be, 10 against him. But if you have two, then you start questioning yourself and seeing if you can handle that. Against the bigger boys, there could be a question. And then even having a great Bellingham will be a big question mark for England.
I wonder if, Gary, I wonder at all if England at some point are going to say, do you know what? I'm not going to worry about who's going to fill in next to Declan Rice. I'm not going to worry about putting a young Kobe Mino, a young Adam Wharton, a fullback in there, a Conor Gallagher who he's a decent. He runs about, right? I think he's a bit of a bull in a china shop, to be honest with you. I wonder if he says at some point, do you know what? I've made a statement by my squad. I bumped a lot of the more experienced players. Some of the ones I've been loyal to. Brought a lot of youngsters, a lot of talent. I'm going to set Declan Rice, and I'm going to get Bellingham and Foden. And I might bring Anthony Gordon in to run the left, and Bukayo Saka to run the right, and we're going to scare people to death. And it's going to put a big task on Declan Rice, but guess what? Jude Bellingham's an all-round midfielder. He can do both. He can get back, he can sit beside Rice, he can get up and attack. And that would give them, to me, okay, you're taking out a little bit more solidity in the midfield, but you're getting people in position. You got a Gordon that can stop a fullback, you got a Saka that can stop a fullback, and you got two players that would frighten the life out of you with Declan Rice, who, by the way, can get all over the place. He can get all over the field. I don't think that will happen, but if I was playing against England and they did that, I'd be like, that's a statement.
Yeah, I think the worry when you watch England is how often they give the ball away. They're not a Spain, they're not a side like who's just going to keep the ball. So when you watch England, we watched it today, and they give the ball away so many times, and that's why you fear for them. Because what are they? Are they the team that can play in transition, or the player that's going to play on the counter-attack? Yes, they can. But they're not a side to me when I watch them thinking they can dictate the game. They're going to keep the ball for awful long periods. I don't see that in them.
Well, that's down to the manager.
Yep.
Because every player that plays in that team plays in teams that dominate possession. Rice at Arsenal, Bellingham at Real Madrid, Saka, Foden, Kane at Bayern Munich. It's all teams that are used to possessing the ball. John Stones from the back. So, you know, as Mark said, it's match day one, it's 3 points. But I think there is enough there in this England performance, if I was other teams in this competition, to look and say, yep, that's where we can get at this side.
Well,